Hello, everybody. Hello, Rob.
Hi, how
Hi,
you
how you
doing?
doing?
Yeah, really good. Really good to be here with you, Deena. How you getting on?
Good.
All right?
I'm good. Thank you very much. We are live. So if anyone has joined, do let us know in the comments because we obviously can't hear you and we can't see you. So it's always nice to know if there's anyone on the other side.
Yeah, exactly. It's quite unnerving actually sitting here and not knowing if anybody's there, but I'm sure they will be, and it'd be great to record this as well because I know that we've got some really good stuff to talk about. So yeah, it should be a good half an hour.
Super. So for those who have managed to join, so Rob and I are talking about what are the five or so things that you can do to really kind of stop your high performers leaving. Um, this is a session, I suppose, tailored more towards kind of leaders who are managing the high performers, perhaps HR, and also the high performers themselves. So what we're not going to cover actually is what is a high performer and how to identify one. So I think that's a conversation for a different time, but an interesting statistic that I came across is that only 14% of companies can actually tell you who their high performers are. And I thought that was quite a low statistic, interestingly.
14%, Deena.
14%, yeah, 1-4.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose it comes down to a few different things, doesn't it? Around how you quantify performance, depending on what kind of industry it is, is it based around revenue or is it based around other metrics? So yeah, it's a really interesting percentage though. I imagine there's quite a bit of depth that you can go into in order to unearth that. What percentage did you think that it could have been? Put you on the spot.
Hmm. Good question. I don't know, but definitely more than 14%. But as you said, there's so many variables and different criteria and all that sort of thing. So yeah, hard to put a number on it.
Yeah.
Um, so although we're talking about how to stop high performers leaving, obviously the ideal is not to stop them leaving by itself. It's to have them there and kind of thriving. So this is a piece around engagement and retention. So I think it's important to kind of mention there's been lots of changes over the last couple of years. So I think COVID had its challenges and the Great Resignation and all that sort of thing. But I think what COVID probably really did was gave people an opportunity to step back and think about, like, what does meaning kind of mean to them? So what is purposeful work? What do they really want to be doing? Lots of people kind of benefited from working from home and being around their families and all that sort of thing. And I don't think that's quite gone away. So I think that piece is still there and it's still top of mind for high performers, especially. That the second thing is obviously we're in a very strange economy at the market. So a lot of businesses have been making redundancies. So quite recently in consultancy and tech, quite a number of people have been laid off and that sort of thing. And there are less promotion spots, as a consequence. So, because of that as well, the high performers are needing to essentially deliver more with less resource. So I think there's additional pressures on them, in light of what's going on there. And then there's another interesting trend around portfolio careers. So I think a lot of people have kind of taken a step back and they're really thinking, what do they really want to do with their careers? And some are choosing to step off the linear career path and thinking, how can I basically leverage or capitalize on my existing skill set and experience and have more of a kind of portfolio kind of career. So an interesting kind of statistic from McKinsey. So high performers are hard to come by. I think that's quite well known. But only 4% within a business are actually deemed to be the thriving stars. So quite a small kind of percentage of people. And then another kind of study is saying that these people are 800% more productive than the average worker. So that just kind of shows kind of the value that they bring to businesses, which is interesting.
Yeah. I think there's also a lot to be said about the workforce and how important everybody is in their own way. So clearly, a company doesn't want to have an underperformer. They don't want people who become a cost center to an organization. But I think that every organization is going to have its high performers, its best performers, and then it's going to kind of filter down into, people who are really capable and able to do their job in their lane, so to speak. But I think that what that then means is that the high performers, the best people, and they know who they are, right? And not in a non-humble way, but if you're good at what you do, and you're therefore probably quite ambitious as to what success looks like for you. So then it comes to a case of, how does your organization, or how does the place that you sit in, give you the opportunity to be the best person that you can be, or get to the position that you want to get to. And I suppose when you look at any CEO or anyone in the C-suite of an organization, you'll clearly see a trajectory and a journey that they've been on, that means that because of their high performance in their area of expertise, whether it's through a revenue generating position or whether it's through a more operationally based or a leadership based position, they've thrived, and then they have been rewarded for that. I think what's really interesting, because we're talking here about how to stop people leaving, or how to therefore, retain your best people, is when you see an individual, and in my business, we're an executive search business, so we're looking at people and their careers and their CVs, their resumes, their LinkedIn all the time. But you'll see the odd person that has gone from a very junior position up to even a CEO, and you're like, wow, that's amazing, all within one organization. Whereas the vast majority of people move incrementally over time from one organization to another, for a variety of reasons that we'll get into today. But it definitely, those high performers, what's their ambition, and how do you look after them so that you can retain your best people, is probably one of the number one, or it should be right at the top of a company's agenda when it comes to how they perform.
Yeah, I agree. I think in the past there was this concept of loyalty to an organization. I feel like that doesn't exist as much as it did. It does to an extent, and I feel perhaps the loyalty is more towards individual leaders within a business rather than the organization per se. But yeah, absolutely. So the first. Sorry, go on, Rob.
Well, I was just going to say, I heard something really interesting on that yesterday. There was someone talking about your business is as successful as it is based on the people that will follow you, or sorry, let me get this right. Your career is based around how much hard work you put in for your leaders. So it doesn't mean that you can't get to your leader's position, but at the point where the leader or the person at the top of the business then moves business, they will then bring you with, because you are someone that they can rely on, someone who they feel that wherever they go, they're going to bring you along, they're going to reward you accordingly, and they're going to look after your career as well. And I just thought it was a really interesting point, and I hadn't really thought about that before, but I do see that quite a lot.
Yeah, that's very true. And to your point about LinkedIn, I definitely see that on LinkedIn. People are starting to kind of, teams of leaders, and their people are kind of moving from organization to organization.
Yeah.
So I think let's start with the first reason why people leave, and then what to basically do about that. And I think the largest kind of piece for me is around career development and growth. So high performers really love a challenge, right? They are super kind of innovative. They want to always be at the forefront of everything. They want the challenge, the intellectual stimulation, and all that kind of thing. So what do you kind of see as being reasons why they sort of decide they want to leave?
Yeah, I think that challenging and also intertwined with giving them great opportunities to develop and be better, continually bettering themselves, is a variable for sure. I put that down to maybe mismanagement, maybe poor leadership, perhaps, but also a lack of investment in your people. And obviously, the order that we talk about these 5 reasons aren't necessarily in order of importance, of course, but I think that there is, an element of, really good people want to, as I say, keep learning and keep improving and keep developing their skills, and that could be, a top performer at a more junior part of someone's career that really is, learning their craft, learning their trade, and really needs to keep pushing forward as far as like that technical capability, all the way through to, people who are, in more senior level positions, but you can never stop developing, right? You can never stop improving as a person. And look, I suppose this goes down to something that you and I preach a lot, Deena, around coaching and training. And so, I talk to companies all the time about, why would someone leave an organization, or why would someone not leave an organization? And so I think that, this isn't kind of gospel, because there's always other opportunities out there. But I think if you are in an organization where you are in a role that you're good at, right, and that you're placed well within the business, and what I mean by that is I think that there's quite a bit of misplacement sometimes in organizations where companies could use their talent in a far more be better, more well positioned within the organization. But if you're in an organization where you're doing well, you like what you do, but you are being invested in by your business, by your leader. So your leader is spending time with you, not micromanaging you at all, but spending time with you, but also investing in you, having training, having coaching. What's the knock-on effect to that? It means that you will be getting better results, right? It means that you will then, what does that mean? It means you'll be happier, because what does that mean? It means that you'll be making more money, potentially, if you're progressing or if you're in a revenue generating position. And what does that mean? It means that, I suppose, when a headhunter like myself, don't like the term necessarily, but a search firm or recruiter comes and picks up the phone and says, hey, do you want to have a chat about such and such a company down the road? You look at it and say, well, look, maybe I'm open to a conversation, but the reality of it is that I'm doing really well. I'm making good money. I'm happy. My work-life balance is wherever it is. It might be too much. It might not be. Nothing's perfect. But my company also is investing in me. They see me as an asset. They see me as something valuable to invest in. So actually, in the nicest possible way, unless company B down the road are going to offer me maybe double my money, which they're not going to, I'm really happy where I am. And let me tell you, that is very rare, right? That when we speak to someone, they do say all those things. Don't get me wrong, there are loads and loads of people who are doing really well and, and have retention bonuses and have they have a really good trajectory and a really good runway ahead of them, where it really doesn't make sense to look elsewhere right now. But the vast majority of time, they don't necessarily feel invested in by their organization. And I think that it's actually a really simple, for want of a better word, solution for organizations to do this, because the offshoot is at the moment that person does walk out the door, they're walking out with so much IP, they're walking out with so much that's related to that organization, that the time and cost that it takes to replace that person is a lot more than it costs to invest in that person. So yeah, I think, to come back to your question a little bit, it is that, top talent always want to keep moving forward and keep progressing. And there's some wonderful organizations that really do that, where they do keep moving their people on and keep moving them into directions. But something I was curious about was, that I'd love to ask you about, Deena, is that, we talk to people about, aspects that maybe frustrate them, aspects of their reason for leaving. But when you're getting into coaching conversations with your clients, how often does, like, what they say at the beginning change to actually what it is that they really need or want to kind of change as an impact to their career or life?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because coaching can get very deep. So people often, I mean, they reveal things to me that they would never tell their manager, they would never tell kind of their boss or anything like that. And I think a lot of the reasons why they do leave is not only because of the career progression and that sort of thing. It's that the individual challenges are not addressed because the leaders, I mean, a lot of them are not coaches, right? So they can't get beneath the surface of what some of the real challenges are. So, things like imposter syndrome, limiting beliefs around ability levels and confidence and all this kind of thing. It all kind of comes to a head, and then you burden them with like extreme workload, and then they're not seeing their kids, and all of a sudden it's just kind of a melting pot that I suppose a recipe for kind of disaster, where they kind of just disengage and they lose interest and they kind of decide to move on. So there's a lot kind of that bubbling beneath the surface, which is why it's the reason why coaching is so impactful. It gets to the heart of what the challenge is, and it really kind of eliminates it before it becomes something much bigger.
Yeah. And we don't know what we don't, sometimes we don't know what we don't know about ourselves. And actually that's where you kind of unearth it.
Yeah.
That work-life balance bit is critical, I think. I think that there's, a decent percentage that's out there as far as people leaving their organization due to work-life balance issues. And again, we see that with people who work in global organizations, where you could be sat in one geography and having to work with people on the other side of the world. But what's really interesting is how much all these things kind of intertwine a little bit.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned before around, the fact that we'll talk a little bit about compensation and benefits, etc. But there's definitely kind of intangible elements and intangible benefits around, how creative you can be, workplace freedom, schedule flexibility, that sort of thing, that I think is also critical to people. And as I say, I revert back to when you started talking at the beginning around COVID. I think that was a moment in time that changed a lot, but actually it's a really interesting one, because I think that a lot of companies are trying to revert back to where they once were. But too much has perhaps shifted for too many people to want to shift back to that. And I think that's actually creating some serious issues as well. Not to mention the fact that there's a connectivity problem, with people working from home and not being in the office together. So, I think these 5 elements, or these 5 reasons for, why people leave an organization